have to say that was probably one of the worst nights I've ever had in a tent. I don't know what speed the wind was at, but it was absolutely ferocious at time to time. But having said that, the tent stood up to it really, really well. These tents are designed to move in the wind, so you get quite a bit of flapping going on. But I'm bone dry, there's not a bit of wetness in here. I've had a reasonable night's sleep, I've had my breakfast, and it was okay. But outside it's atrocious. So Desiree and I have dived into the youth hostel to discuss how the tents fared.
Tent was great. The geodesic design means it just feels really stable, it doesn't feel noisy at all.
The shape of the tent holds it in place quite nicely. The poles actually support the other poles and it supports the canvas.
I think the only downside to it potentially if you're backpacking on your own is it's quite a heavy tent to carry in yourself, but it's not designed for one person, it's designed for two.
The mountain equipment tent was very good. I stayed completely dry inside. It's a big tent, it's very roomy. It's held up by two curved poles. So there's actually quite a lot of material that's not supported. So when it is windy, it flaps a lot, but they don't blow away. Yeah, and I think I would probably recommend it. The one that's fared least best probably is the Van Gogh tent, which we kind of probably suspected, simply because it doesn't have any guy ropes. And to me that's very odd for a tent to be used in the UK. If it doesn't have any guy ropes, that's a big black mark right away. There is a balance to be struck between low weight and practicality. So it looked a bit rough this morning, and I don't think I would have liked to have spent the night in it.
Terra Nova tent I put up yesterday, the laser competition. It's so light. It's got a single pole structure and then it's guyed out at either end. The main thing that I think these guys are trying to do with this tent is just to cut the weight down.
I think for mountain marathon people who don't mind being uncomfortable, you know, they're running all day, they spend the night in the tent, they're away first thing in the morning, then it's fine. That leaves the Vaudi Power Lizard, and I've used that tent a lot. I used it 2 weeks last year when my wife and I walked coast to coast across Scotland. And at first I thought it'd be too small. You have to know the person very well you're sharing with. But it was stable, it's easy to pitch, it's very light, it weighs 1 kg, which is pretty good for a two-person tent. And it's a tent I've actually become quite fond of. It's still horrendous outside, but since there's no road to the youth hostel and we still have 8 more jackets to try out, we've no option but to start walking. The weather is now so bad we've had to ditch our normal cameras and rely on a small waterproof one. We'll be stopping in whatever shelters we can find to give you the lowdown on our kit. Oh, it's got rain.
Lovely.
Oh, this is nice.
This is great.
So have we chat about the jackets we've been wearing this morning? The Montaignes, first of all.
I really like this jacket, really lightweight, functional, simple, but still could be used technically as well. I guess the one thing I'm a little bit sceptical about with these super lightweight jackets is just how long they last, really.
It is quite a thin fabric, but I think you probably find it would last quite a long time. I have to confess I quite like Montaigne jackets. I particularly enjoyed wearing this one because we were out in some horrible weather. I thought the hood was fabulous. It worked really well. It was snug on my head, and yet I still had plenty of visibility. When I moved my head, the whole hood moved with me rather than my head turning inside it. So I really liked that. I thought it's a really nice jacket. Interesting comparing the price of that as a lightweight jacket with this Marmot one. This is the Marmot stretch jacket. It's £40 cheaper than this one, but incredibly lightweight. I have to say I'm slightly damp inside, but it's a summer jacket. I love the cut of it. It's just little features here and there.
I think the thing I love about Marmot is there's nothing extra on it that doesn't need to be there. Generally, Marmot stuff tends to last quite a long time, so I really like this jacket as a hill walking jacket.
I have to be honest and say I'd much rather the weather be nice and warm and sunny and I could wander along in a pair of shorts and a t-shirt But that's not the reality of hill walking in Scotland.
Quite often the enjoyment is in hindsight, isn't it? You're out and about there and it's really foul and you're just thinking, what am I doing here? But there's something about pitting your wits against the elements and actually using the skills that you've learned to be in the hills. And as a famous comedian once said, there's no such thing as bad weather, just inappropriate clothing.
Well, the wind and the rain show absolutely no sign of relenting, and we've arrived at Glenlicht House, where we've been able to use a little shelter that's kind of stuck onto the end of the house just to get out of the rain. We've been wearing Arc'teryx jackets. How do you get on with yours?
I've got an Arc'teryx jacket myself and I like the durability of Arc'teryx and I like the fit of them as well. This one I found a little bit bulky for me. There seemed to be just a wee bit too much fabric kind of around the arms and round the waist. It wasn't quite as fitted as I'm used to with Arc'teryx. Really great hood on it. I was out in I think the wildest of the rain that we've had today with this jacket on, and the hood was absolutely brilliant.
Well, I wasn't so pleased
Oh, okay.
with the men's Arc'teryx jackets. Arc'teryx have a reputation for making some of the best waterproof garments in the world. So maybe I was a bit disappointed in this one. I just felt it was a bit like wearing a suit of armour. It was just big and bulky. Having said that, I think this is the sort of jacket that you could wear on a real nasty winter's day in Scotland and come out of it dry. So
Yeah.
from that point of view, it's good. So anyway, I've changed from there into something completely different.
Yeah.
And this is the Paramo Velez smock. It's the only smock that we've got on this test. I quite like a pull over the head smock actually. It is like a mini layer system. And because it's like a mini layer system, it's very warm and it's very bulky.
Yes.
So for a day like this, where it's really windy and really nasty, I can't actually think of a better garment to wear. But for general use, I just find Paramo garments too warm.
I think you're right. I prefer the option of putting more layers on and taking them off. And I always feel with Paramo, once this is on, it's kind of staying on, and it's been brilliant today. The thing that I really love about Paramo is it doesn't actually feel like you're wearing a waterproof, because the fabric is so soft and it's so comfortable. I think my criticism of Paramo is I find the fit of it is just quite baggy, but I also really rate the way that the fabric works.
To sum up all the jackets, they're a pretty good selection. They've been tested in some pretty horrendous conditions. We thought they were all pretty good for certain times of the year and for certain uses.